What goes up must come down. Welcome to the Brand Breakdown. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is where we're going to track the rise and fall of big brands, from companies to celebs to pop culture phenoms and everything in between. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back. This week in the Brand Breakdown, we are going to talk about the fallout from Omid Scobie's book Endgame, which we covered last week. And then we are also going to wrap up our series on the Sussexes. So I'm going to toss it over to Courtney, who's our royal aficionado, and we'll chat through some of the fallout that we have seen and read about this week. And take it away, Courtney.
Yeah, so I don't think that Omid, when he wrote this book, I think he thought that there would definitely be a little bit of controversy. I think he thought that he was gonna definitely stir up some headlines. I don't think he expected it to go as poorly as it has. I definitely don't think the Sussexes, if they were involved, which Omid swears up and down they are not, but we've heard that story before, and it turned out not to be true. But if they were involved, I think they are, and even if they're not involved, I think they're surprised by the fallout on their end and how much negativity has come their way. Um, so for anyone who hasn't been following along in the tabloids and the news, the king was named as one of the royal racists, as was the Princess of Wales, Catherine, aka Kate Middleton, but please don't call her that because she hasn't been Kate Middleton for like 10 years. But anyway, so they were named as a royal racist, and I think that that has done so much harm both to Omid's reputation as an author and a journalist, as well as the Sussex's reputation, because to be quite frank, nobody believes it. It looks like a really petty, vindictive thing that Meghan put out there, and it came from Meghan because the the way it's laid out in the book is that Meghan had written an a letter to the king, and in that letter, she named him and Catherine as the ones who had been expressing concern about the color of her child's skin. That is the issue that she brought up during the Oprah interview, where it first came to light that somebody in the family had potentially said something concerning. In the Oprah interview, they only ever called it concerning. Harry and Meghan themselves have never actually said the words like racist. It's just been something that for 3 years we've all been allowed to marinate on and think of like, oh, who said this concerning thing? And, the implication that the concerning thing was a racist thing. And so I think that naming the two people, like people just don't believe it because for his part, the king he's got a 40-year track record of undertaking initiatives and starting foundations and being involved in projects that help people of color. Catherine, for her part, I mean, nobody in the 20 years she's been in the public eye has ever had a negative thing to say about her, with the exception of her sister-in-law. Um, and she also has a track record of working with people from a wide range of backgrounds, and it just doesn't add up. It's just not something that seems like a reasonable conclusion to draw.
Well, and I want to bring up something interesting too that we kind of touched on last week, but I've read some updates to it since then. That Scobie said that he in nowhere did he put in the manuscript that it was Charles and
Hmm.
Catherine, that the Dutch must have gotten it wrong, blah blah blah. And then there was this huge interview with the translator who said, "All I do is translate. I am just writing what is there. And if that's what was there, that's what I wrote. Like I'm not making stuff up." And she
Hmm.
apparently has this long track record of being extremely good translator. So I think that there's something fishy in that as well. And I don't know how that's going to be concluded, but I do think that there's something rotten in Denmark in that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the Omid's agents have confirmed that they did send the edited version to the Dutch publishing company. So my guess is that the series of events was that wrote edited Omid wrote a version that he signed off on, he sent to the editors. The editors edited a version, they signed off on it, and then it was sent to legal. Legal came back and said, okay, no, you have to make some changes because there were other changes in the book too. There were a few very large passages that were pretty heavily edited in the Dutch version, besides just naming who the people were. And so I bet legal came back and said, you have to make some revisions. Omid made those revisions. He signed off, editing signed off, legal signed off. But in between there, after the editors had signed off and when everything was going through the legal review process, a copy was probably sent to the translators so that they could get a jump start on it, because translating a book is not something that happens, in 5 minutes. It takes a little bit of time. And so they probably sent out the early copy so that they could get a jump start on it. And somehow, some way, although his agents insist that it was the actual legal approved version was sent out, the publishing company, maybe they made a decision that because they'd already paid the translators to do it and the translators perhaps were almost done or all the way finished, they just weren't going to do a second translation. Maybe somehow somebody just missed it in their inbox. I don't know how books get sent. I'm assuming it's an email, but maybe it's an actual printed manuscript. But somehow, some way, it did not get from Omid's agent, who insists that they sent the legal approved version to the Dutch publishing house and into the hands of the translator. And like you said, the translator, Omid kind of tried to throw them under the bus first, saying, "Oh, I never wrote their names in any version." That's not true. That's another example of Omid having told a lie that he was very quickly caught out on, because the Dutch translator was like, "No, their names were there. I didn't make stuff up, so obviously you had to have written it." Um, and it's like you said, it's just like a really fishy situation because somebody somewhere dropped the ball. Omid has again been proven to have been lying, which is, or maybe not, I don't want to say lying, that sounds really aggressive, but like he told a fib. He said he never wrote their names anywhere and never submitted a version that had anyone's names. And it turns out he had to have done that at some point. He may have been surprised that that was the version that was printed, but he definitely did it. Um, so yeah, he's taken a lot of flack for that situation. And there's some there's been some speculation, is the translator going to try to sue him for slandering their name and saying that
Oh,
he
right.
didn't, he said they made something up essentially, and that could harm the translator's reputation. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there, but it was
Well, I
drama,
think it
drama,
was
drama.
oh, 100%. I think it was really unexpected on Scobie's part for all of that to blow up in that way. I think he was thinking it would all blow up in terms of what he had disclosed about the royal family, but I don't
Mhm.
think that's what happened. I think everybody went like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever. We can't believe you did this, and where did you get the letters, and were the Sussexes involved?"
Right.
And a week later, what I have read is that sales are off by 50%
Hmm.
um, in both Amazon and WH Smith. Now, I don't have their numbers. I don't know if that's true, but that's just what I read. So interesting that the book might, ultimately tank because A, nobody believes it. B, it feels like just a big pile of stinky poo because he's just defiling people in some way. It feels like again and again and again, and you know, I don't know.
Yeah. It just
I don't
feels
know
like
him, so
round two of like the second version of his personal vendetta against the royals. And also because he talks in the book a little bit about how he had to fight to get his press credentials to certain events. He was starting to get left off the list for things. So it seems like A, it's just his personal vendetta, and then B, as you said, a lot of it comes down to like, okay, well, where did he get the letter? He's saying Meghan and Harry weren't involved. So did someone from the palace give him a copy of the letter? I sincerely doubt that. So where did he get it from? Um, so he must have at some point had contact with Meghan and Harry, or the way it worked out with Finding Freedom, which was proven in a court of law, and this is not speculation. This was something Meghan had to apologize and admit to. She had specifically authorized her team to discuss certain things. So Omid would reach out to her team, ask some questions. Her team would send the email to Meghan. She would write out all of her responses and then email send the email back to her team and her team would forward it on to Omid. Or, maybe they would take her email address off of it to try to eliminate a paper trail or something. But she was very much the one providing the information for Finding Freedom. And it's Omid says, "Oh, no, no, that didn't happen this time." And it's like, well, how am I supposed to believe you? You already told me it didn't happen one time, and that was a lie. So now I don't believe that it didn't happen a second time, especially when you seem to have information that there's no way else you could have it unless she gave it to you. It's
It
just
feels
so
like his
weird.
credibility is shot.
Yeah, I can't see him ever being taken seriously as a journalist again, or as some sort of, royal biographer with well-placed sources, because it just keeps turning out that his well-placed source is Harry and Meghan complaining. Like, I don't know if that's really I guess it's a well-placed source if that's what your book is about, just Harry and Meghan complaining. But there's nothing, nobody takes him seriously. Nobody had really taken him seriously for a while. He was always referred to as the Sussexes' friend, the Sussexes' mouthpiece. Nobody was really referring to him as a reporter anymore. And this, I think, is just the final nail in the coffin on that.
Well, if I don't know how you could take somebody seriously as a journalist if you feel like their journalistic integrity is compromised,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? So what's he doing from here? Like I don't I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
that he has a way back into the Royals. Um I think he
Yeah.
blew that popsicle stand.
I mean, I think he technically right now still holds the position of like editor at large for some US publication, Harper's Bazaar, and a royal contributor at ABC News. And he also appears on Good Morning America. He has covered some royal events for various US based news outlets. I can't see those positions if he still holds them. This what I'm reading right here on this list might be a little outdated. I can't see those continuing. I don't think any US news station is going to be like, "Oh yeah, let's have this guy on again," unless they're interviewing him about the fallout from all of this. So, yeah, I don't know. I think for Scobes, this is it. This is kind of the end of his royal reporting career. He did used to be an entertainment reporter. Maybe he goes back to that. Maybe he takes a step out of the royal circle and realizes this is not where he should be. But even then, who's going to trust him? Like no matter what he's trying to report on, who is going to believe a word he says?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody is. I kind of feel sorry for him because he really trusted in his let's call them sources. Um and I think that they've, I think that he just what is it called? What is it when you bid on the wrong horse or whatever? You bet the
He
wrong
backed
horse.
he backed the wrong horse.
He backed the wrong horse. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, he says in the book that he made a conscious decision to focus his reporting on Meghan when it came out that she was dating Harry and all of that stuff. So he says like that was a conscious decision. He wasn't, given assignments by his employer to follow her stuff. That was his choice. And I think that was definitely the wrong choice. He backed the wrong horse. He doubled down on it too, like as it started to become obvious that there was disagreements between the Waleses, who were at the time the Cambridges, and the Sussexes, he doubled down and he really latched on to Team Sussex. And I think he thought, he was, it worked to an extent. He was getting a lot of clicks. His articles were doing very well because there was so much drama around them, but wanting to be attached to the people who create the most headlines because they're causing the most drama in a negative way is not a great move for longevity, right? And I think he thought when Megxit happened and the Sussexes came to the US, like, okay, they're going to make this big splash. They've got this whole second round that he gets to cover now as their most trusted reporter, kind of. But none of that ever came to fruition. We are now 3 years past Megxit. It still has not panned out for them. And he burned just as Harry and Meghan have done. He burned so many bridges that nobody wants to kind of, I don't want to say nobody wants to work with him anymore. I don't think that's the case, but his credibility shot. He picked the wrong side, and it didn't work out the way anyone on that side thought it was going to work out.
Well, I mean, I don't know any of them, and this is all pure speculation on our part. But anytime that you do something that you know is going to intentionally hurt another person, whether be it privately or publicly, and this was very public, you run a gigantic risk of huge backlash.
Hmm.
Um, because people, while people are have, no doubt enjoy salacious gossip, and some of what we do on here is kind of reporting some of the scuttlebutt. You don't want to hurt other people. I mean, I am not trying to hurt anybody. And I think, some of what has been written and some of what has been said was intentionally, deliberately, overtly hurtful to
Hmm.
a great number of people.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I think there's a difference between, like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we're doing the right thing, but like we're taking information, we're distilling it, we have our opinions on stuff, but we're providing facts, we're providing a basis for all of this. And I think that we've also, there have been some things where we've both kind of said, like, this might not be the right approach to this. Like, maybe I shouldn't say it like this, or like we've been swayed one way or the other. And I think, like you said, and I think that what Omid and Harry and Meghan are doing is like they're just like you just said, they're just trying to hurt people. They're just trying to like get their pound of flesh and make people feel bad because they feel bad. And that's not what I want to do. I don't want to make anybody feel bad. I'm just looking at a situation being like, here's what happened. Here's the facts of the situation. I have some opinions about it that are my personal opinions, but like I'm not trying to hurt people. And Omid and Harry and Meghan are just trying. Like think of how much content the three of them have created with the only objective of just hurting people. It's crazy. The three of them have made careers out of it.
Well, I think that Harry thought that putting Spare out there was some sort of cathartic release for him. And I'm all for the catharsis. Don't get me wrong. You know me. I love for everybody to air their concerns and let's work them out. I don't think you should do that in front of 7.5 billion people.
Yeah,
You know,
no.
work that
No,
shit out
talk to your
privately.
therapist, have a family
Right.
meeting.
Right? Like, have some
Like,
family therapy. Like, I don't think that those things need to be aired. I mean, I don't know. I think if I wrote my tell all memoir, it would be boring because while I've had a very exciting life in some ways, I don't want the whole world to know about it. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And I even posthumously, I wouldn't want to hurt people, um, because I don't
there's
want to
a
destroy people's
reason.
memories.
There's a reason that the royal family, all of their papers are sealed for 100 years because no, they don't ever want anyone living to be able to read what they all like keep diaries and stuff, for posterity. And they don't want anyone to be able to read that. They don't, their wills are all sealed for 100 years because they don't want anyone living to be able to, be affected or offended by something that happened privately. And then Harry goes and does the exact opposite and writes an entire book and airs all of his family's dirty laundry, which is like not acceptable if you're a regular person, never mind if you're part of a family who literally sets the standard for keeping private things private. And
I
like,
love I love that idea of writing my memoir and then sealing it for 100 years. I mean, I don't know if, as a planet if we'll still be here in 100 years, or if I'll have any
oh, don't
progeny that
say
has
that.
progeny. Well, hey, listen, if we don't get some of these things in check, you know,
I know.
there's I mean, and that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day, but there's some stuff that needs to happen in order for our world as a whole to survive. Look up the Fermi paradox if you're interested. But anyway, 100 years is a good ceiling point. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to write a memoir and then seal it for 100 years.
Yeah,
Although
that
I
way
bet you
nobody.
$20, my daughter would open that as soon as I was dead. She'd
She's
be like,
like,
100 years of my butt. I'm opening it.
she might wait 100 minutes, maybe.
maybe 100 seconds. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I like that idea, 100 years. All right. So I feel like the bottom line is that while Endgame was a titillating book for many, I don't think that long term it's got the legs that maybe the author thought it would have. And it
Hmm.
certainly did not produce the effect of damaging the royal family in the way that he maybe hoped, because I think that it did not damage them and that people have rallied around them and that they
Yeah.
might take legal action, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I think for sure. Like the next day, or maybe the couple days later, Catherine had an engagement. The king was out and about. They just had the diplomatic reception. We are recording this on Wednesday. They had the annual diplomatic reception last night, which is a tiara event. Um, and people are just really, like you said, they're rallying around the king and Catherine. Nobody is sitting there saying, "Oh my God." I mean, there are some people who are saying, "Oh my God, how could they do this?" Those people are pretty much, diehard Sussex fanatics, so they were going to do that no matter what. But for the most part, every reporter, every newspaper, every like on the US and UK side, like anybody who has an opinion on the matter is saying, "Oh wow, how could they do that to the king and to Kate especially?" And it just seems like it backfired. It did no damage other than making it did damage to Harry and Meghan. It did not damage the royals in any way.
Somebody in Montecito came out to say that Montecito was not interested in the book, which kind of made me laugh because it's like, is it like the mayor of Montecito? Is it the barista? I mean, I love
Right.
Montecito. That place is absolutely gorgeous, but I'm like, who's making that, assumption or
Yeah.
decree or whatever? We are not interested.
Who is
It
standing for
just
the whole city of Montecito?
right? It's kind of funny. So anyway, all right, so we've wrapped that up. I think we can put a pin in that, unless we hear something else. But let's go ahead and wrap up where we are with the Sussexes. This is the last episode for the Sussexes themselves, unless something kind of drops and is crazy.
Hmm.
However, just so you guys know, we're going to continue to do our royal series, the Royal Mess, and we're going to continue to cover the royals. From here into maybe perpetuity. We're not really sure. And these episodes will start airing on Tuesdays, and then we'll
Hmm.
have regular brand breakdown episodes airing on Thursdays, as we have been for the last several months. So, anyway,
Yay!
I know it's super exciting. We've had so much interest in the Royals that we want to keep it going for you guys because I think there's just a lot of curiosity there and interest. And we'll continue to look at it from a brand perspective, like how does it hurt the royal brand? How does it hurt the monarchy? How does it help the monarchy? It'll still be a brand thing. We just will cover other members of the family.
Yeah. Got to give the people what they want.
Got to give the people what they want. That's right. All right. That said, so let's wrap up. Where were we when we left off? I think we were at the Queen had just died, right?
Yes. So we left off the last time we were speaking about the Sussexes with the Queen's death and how that had kind of, you know, rocked everything. The Queen was on the throne for 70 years. So there's literally like three generations who have only ever known her as the monarch, really, because the oldest generation knew her father, but she was there for the majority of it. Obviously, the middle generation had him their whole life, and then the younger generation had her for most of the time. So having Charles on the throne is kind of a culture shock to a lot of people, but in the Sussex world, it really rocked the boat because the Queen had kind of been their protector a little bit. And also, the Queen kind of shielded William and Charles specifically from having to be the bad guys because everything was able to be under the guise of, the Queen has made this decision. When the Queen died, a couple of things that really rocked the Sussexes world took place immediately, right? Like the moment she died, Charles ascended the throne and became king. William and Harry and everyone in the line of succession all bumped up one. And Meghan and Harry's children became eligible to hold the title of prince and prince. Prior to the queen dying, this was not their legal right. They were eligible to be titled as the children of a duke. Harry and Meghan elected not to do that and elected to just have them be Miss Lilibet rather than Lady Lilibet and Master Archie instead of Lord Archie, um, which is within their right to do. However, the moment Charles became king, they became technically, legally, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. And this kind of, amidst all of the drama, amidst all of the sadness of the queen dying, this also kind of set off a firestorm because then people started saying, okay, when are they gonna start calling them prince and princess? Are they getting their birthright? Will they be allowed to use their titles, or is the king going to withhold them from them? And if the king withholds them, is this a racist thing, or is this just part of the streamlining the monarchy, which has long been for like, I don't know, since William and Catherine got married, we've been hearing about the king wanting to streamline the monarchy when he took the throne. So there was all of this stuff took place, and I think the biggest shock to Harry and Meghan's system was what happened the day after the Queen died. The Queen died on September 8th. She was 96 years old. She had reigned for 70 years. And at that moment, Charles became king. William was still the Duke of Cambridge at this point. In order to become the Prince of Wales, it's not an automatic title, it has to be conveyed. And so on September 9th, the day after the Queen died, the King made a televised speech. And in that speech, he addressed his son as the Prince of Wales. So it wasn't a formal, you know, there was no formal ceremony. There is not going to be an investiture. Um, there was no formal like document or press release. The King just simply kind of said it in his televised statement. And at that moment, William became not only first in line to the throne, but he became the Prince of Wales, while Harry remained the Duke of Sussex. There is no like optional title for Harry to take at this point. And he also mentioned, his beloved son and daughter-in-law making their life overseas, which people kind of took that as a dig to the Sussexes, as if he was saying, like they're overseas, they're there. This is not a moment where they're going to be talking about coming back because I'm acknowledging the fact that they are no longer here. And the next day, on September 10th, the royals who were at Windsor, so it was William and Catherine, now the Waleses, and Meghan and Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, did a surprise walkabout outside of Windsor Castle. And this was the very first time that we had seen them all together, not only since the Queen died, but it was the first time we had seen them together in months. I think almost maybe 6 months at that point, maybe even longer. Um, we had not seen them together. This was the first time we'd seen them together since the Oprah interview. Um, Archetypes, Meghan's podcast, had started airing during this time. It had to go on hiatus when the Queen died, but a few episodes had already come out. And the tension between the two couples was you like I've never seen any royal look so uncomfortable in any situation as the four of them looked.
And
And
this is
I think,
before Spare, right?
yep, this is before Spare. So like Spare has not even
Two
happened yet.
months, like 2 months before Spare. When did she die? August.
She died in September, and the Netflix documentary came out in December, and Spare came out either December or January, but the Spare came out right after the documentary. So this was just a couple months before the Netflix documentary. So they knew, or the docu-series rather. So they knew that the docu-series was coming out. Um, they knew Spare was coming out. They had already seen Oprah. They had already heard Meghan a little bit on Archetypes talk about, all these like digs or whatever. And I think the most telling thing of their walkabout was there is a video that I will post in the show notes for you guys where Kate looks at Meghan and gives her what can only be described as like a death glare. Like she puts Meghan in her place. Meghan looks so uncomfortable and terrified, and Kate just stares her down like, don't look at me, don't speak to me, don't talk to me, don't even come near me. And I've never seen like I've been following the Royals for a very long time. I have been a fan of Kate Middleton since she was just a girlfriend. I have never seen her look anything less than happy, and she looked like she was literally about to murder somebody.
Do you think that something had been said, or that she's just so pissed off at that point about what happened in the Oprah interview, she's giving like mad side eye?
So what we've been told by both sides is that the the walkabout was initially never supposed to include the Sussexes, and at the last moment, William decided to invite them because they were in Windsor. And remembering also that at this point, when the Queen was dying, Harry and his brother and his uncles and aunts actually were trying to get to Scotland to see the Queen before she died. Harry did not arrive with everybody to Balmoral. If you all recall, he had to take a private flight. He It was said that the royals were in a private plane and they were waiting an hour on the tarmac. And people were tracking this plane. Like I was glued to the news, like seeing when this plane was going to take off, when it was going to land, because at this point the Queen had not. We knew something was very wrong that day. All the BBC reporters were dressed in black. It was crazy. Um, Crazy for a royal watcher, not crazy for the rest of the normal world. But so we hear that there is this plane. It's at RAF Northolt, and it is on the tarmac. And members of the royal family are in this plane, and they are headed to Scotland. And they waited on the tarmac for an hour. During this time, what is said to have been happening is that Harry was insisting that Meghan be allowed to come with him, and his father was saying, no, she is not invited. William, at that point, made the rumor has it that Catherine wasn't coming because the kids had just started school the day before. And so Catherine was going to be staying home with the children. And it was like, if she's not coming, Meghan can't come because Catherine is now she's going to become momentarily, basically, the Princess of Wales. Her husband is first in line to the throne. It doesn't look right for Meghan to be here if Kate is not. And Harry was doing the whole like, I want her here. She's my wife. Don't talk to my wife about, like, don't talk about my wife this way. Like, she's entitled to be there. And Charles and William were putting their feet down and being like, no, she's not coming. And so Harry did not make that flight because at some point it was decided like they couldn't wait around any longer for this to be resolved. They had to leave. Um, the royals who were on that flight were William and then Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, and Sophie, Edward's wife. So the Queen's two younger sons and her daughter-in-law. Because of the delay, they were not able to make it in time to say goodbye to her, to see her still alive. So the royals have a lot of animosity there because reportedly, Harry's little temper tantrum about Meghan kept Andrew and Edward from being able to see their mother one last time and say goodbye because they arrived, they landed in Scotland um like very shortly after she died, and then it was still like an hour ride to, or it's like 40 minutes I think, from the airport to Balmoral. So it was kind of like had they left on time, they would have made it. And so that had happened on the 8th, and there's this big fight about, is Meghan coming? Everyone's very upset because people missed their opportunity to say goodbye. Catherine, who has always, always, always put the royal family first, was likely very upset just because like she has to deal with all this drama and like it's not about any of them. Um, and reportedly, the car ride down the long walk at Windsor when they went out to meet everybody at the gates was silent. Like they did not speak in the car. William invited Harry via text. They had to wait 40 minutes for them to get ready because it was such a last minute invitation that Meghan and Harry like were not planning on attending. There is a rumor, and this is just a rumor, and there's not much proof that it's true, but there is a rumor that part of the reason William invited slash told them to come with him and Catherine is because the Sussexes were planning their own walkabout with Netflix cruise in tow. Um, some people say that in some of the photos of Meghan that day, you can see she's wearing a mic pack. I've never looked at them that closely. I choose to believe that's not true, but those are some of the rumors that are out there. Um, and so reportedly, William said, you have to come with us because you're not doing this on your own and turning it into fodder for your Netflix show. Some other sources, including Omid, say that the king told William he had to invite his brother, and it was going to be like, we're just going to do this as a show of unity. Just invite him. And William was like, fine, okay, I'll invite him. But it was such a last minute invitation that they had to push that walkabout back 40 minutes because Meghan and Harry needed time to get ready. And William and Catherine are just They just look furious. And Meghan and Harry just look so uncomfortable. And it's just the most awkward thing when you see the four of them get out of the car and you just see the look on everybody's face. It's just the most, like, I would not have wanted to have been in that car because the tension was probably suffocating. And it was probably a literal physical feeling of uncomfortableness for whoever had to drive that car.
Yeah, and what a terrible day to have to do all that too. Like you're mourning someone that you truly loved because the
Right.
queen was truly loved by all of them. I think also including Meghan.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's not good for any of them. So anyway,
No.
so we did the walkabout,
Yep.
and then
And then this is the first time that I think, I had said at the beginning of this little spiel of mine that the queen dying really shook things for Harry because we started this entire series of the Sussexes talking about Harry and William had been brought up with this idea that you guys are equal. You are royals, you're second and third in line to the throne, but first and foremost, you are brothers, you are equal. And as they got older, this equality, especially once William got married and then Harry got married, this equality started to kind of be chipped away at because they have this natural position in the hierarchy of the royal family and in their jobs, if we're going to call being a royal a job, where there's this hierarchy where they're actually not equal. William will be king one day. And up until this point, they were both royal dukes. They were both the oldest adults in the line of succession. William's kids put some space between them, but they were the oldest direct line of succession adults. They were before Prince Andrew and Prince Edward and Princess Anne. And the minute the Queen died and Charles became king, William became first in line to the throne, and then the King publicly named William as the Prince of Wales. That's a huge dynamic shift. There is no pretending anymore that we are equal. That William and Harry, as members of the royal family, hold the same role. As soon as the Queen died, William became the Duke of Cornwall, which may be a familiar title to some of you because Camilla, up until this point, had always gone by the Duchess of Cornwall. And that's because that is the automatic title of the heir to the throne. And so William became the Duke of Cornwall and took over the Duchy of Cornwall, which is I think it's a $1.5 billion per year property portfolio. Um, and it's like many, many thousands upon thousands of acres of land. And he instantly became one of the richest people in the country. He became the Prince of Wales. He became next in line to the throne. And it really shakes the dynamic where Harry can no longer lean on this thought of like, oh, everything is so unfair to me because me and my brother are the same. And it's just the first time where Harry actually has to now defer to his brother. There is no more, we're both the grandchildren of the monarch. Um, Even though, yes, they're both sons of the monarch, William's position is so much more constitutionally important at this point, and within the hierarchy of the family and within all of the protocols of the family. Harry has to now actually defer to his brother, and Meghan has to defer to Kate. And I think that also led to some of the tension that we saw that day because, like, I don't think that William and Catherine have ever been people who, stand on protocol and say, like, oh, this person has to do so and so, whatever thing in my presence. But I bet that day there was just this feeling of, like Megan's got to curtsy to them type of thing. um, and we all know how Megan feels about curtsying. So it was just a huge shift in the dynamic. And I think that for Megan and Harry, from the brand perspective, it really became this was like when the fight really had to start because now they had to fight for their children's titles. They had to fight to be like, even though they're the Prince and Princess of Wales, we are still, Harry's still the son of the king. And we are still just as important. And from a branding perspective, they'd already done so much damage to their brand that it really became like an uphill, even more of an uphill climb for them at that point, I think.
Well, and this is before the Netflix documentary and
Hmm.
Spare.
Yeah.
So this is just the Oprah interview at this point, and they left the royal family
Yep. This
essentially.
is just Megxit and the Oprah interview. I think that there was some talk about, were there last minute edits to the Netflix docuseries? Were there last minute edits to Spare after the Queen died to try to include some information or soften things up? I couldn't possibly say. I don't know. My guess is that when the Queen died, for Harry and Meghan, the gloves came off. The things they started doing, they went from, I don't want to say they were like being respectful, but they were being a little bit more quiet before the Queen died. And I feel like when the Queen died, they were like, okay, we don't have to be respectful of this, you know, woman who's revered around the world. Like they knew they'd never score any points by going against the Queen. They knew they'd never score any points by insulting the Queen because she's just beloved everywhere. But they know that there are people who don't like Charles and who really don't like Camilla. And they were like, okay, now we can try to use that to our advantage. And so I think they started playing a little bit dirty. I think that, that might be when Harry inserted some stuff into Spare about Camilla being the one who would throw him under the bus and stuff like that, because he no longer really cared about playing nice, because he felt that when the Queen died and his brother became Prince of Wales and his father said in his televised speech, my son and my daughter-in-law making their life overseas, he probably felt like, okay, like that's the line in the sand. I don't have to play fair anymore. And not that they'd been playing super fair in the first place, but they were no longer restraining themselves.
Oh, that's true. If you read Spare, there's pretty little restraint in
Hmm.
in what he says in Spare. I mean, he puts it all out there. Well, so okay, so then the docu-series comes out. It's actually not widely received. Like people don't really didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, it's
Um,
funny because it was widely watched, but not widely enjoyed. I think
right.
a lot of people hate watched it. I think a lot of people watched it just because they were curious, but nobody, again, I don't want to say nobody, but a lot of people watched it and were like, oh, okay, so this is just Oprah again. We're just getting more whining. And, you guys sound really bitter. And they included the part where Meghan makes fun of having to curtsy to the Queen. And she says it's like that restaurant, Medieval Times. And people are like, oh, you can't take a dig at the royal family like that. We still respect this institution. And people kind of started to be like, all right, there's nothing really new here. You're just whining again, which becomes a pattern with the Sussexes.
Well, on Rotten Tomatoes, it only got a 45% from critics and a 19% from viewers. So the audience score was only 19%.
Yeah, people didn't, like I said, a lot of people watched it, I think just out of curiosity, but people did not like it. People did not like what they saw, which is not great news for the Sussexes who are trying to, build a brand on themselves, because they're not trying to build a brand on any sort of talent. They're not trying to build a brand on any sort of deliverable that they've brought to market. They're trying to build a brand on themselves, and people don't like them, unfortunately for them.
Well, it's kind of boring if I'm honest. I mean, it was kind
Yeah.
of a boring docuseries. I thought Spare, well, poorly written. And one of my friends was like, "I can't believe you made me read this. It's pure drivel." Um, she's like, "It's so whiny. I just want to die." Um, but she read it anyway for me. But it's pretty. There's a lot of it that there's no new revelations, and it's not like they're not truly setting the world on fire, in
Right.
terms of what they're doing with their brand and how they're helping other people and etc. They're not truly doing anything to make a difference yet, other than in their own pocketbook.
Right. Yeah,
Like
they're
they said they
really,
would. Like, I mean, lots of people do things and they don't make a difference. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've done a million things that haven't made a difference, but I'm saying that there are two people who say they are going to make a difference. That is their life's work. They want to be
Hmm.
those people. And yet, so far in the last 3.5 years, we haven't seen any of that, as far as I know, unless I'm missing something.
I mean, it's funny. They've done some things that could be considered, I guess, like charitable things to do, but they always seem to come back and bite them in the butt because, for example, on Veterans Day, they went to a veteran ceremony in or veteran cemetery in California to lay some roses on a British soldier's grave, which is, very kind and thoughtful, but they brought a camera crew with them. And during the time they were there, they blocked families of other veterans from being able to access the cemetery to to go visit the graves of their loved ones. Um, and they did this just as, a publicity stunt. They went to Uvalde, or Megan went to Uvalde after that horrible school shooting and brought, you know, she brought supplies like food and water and stuff for the volunteers, but also brought a camera crew. They went to a school in, I think it was in Harlem, where Megan donated some copies of her book, The Bench, to the school, but they brought a camera crew. And they also, back and forth with the publicist, has been leaked of that visit where it was very clear they were just there for, they weren't caring about making a difference. Megan was there because she wanted to get some good PR. And so they keep doing things where on the face of it, it's like, oh, that looks like it was a nice thing to do. And it's like, but wait, why'd you bring your own photographer? Why is there a videographer? Why are you mic'd up? Oh, because you need content. You're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart. You're doing it because you're going to monetize this visit to a school shooting, which I don't think has appeared anywhere, because the backlash was absolutely insane from it. People were horrified that she was photographed there, that she had brought a crew there. And so I think that, they said they were going to have this life of service. They said service is universal. And then, like you said, they haven't really made an impact in any way. They've just been rehashing the same story for like 4 years and just bashing their family repeatedly. And now we've got Endgame that came out, which is just more of the same from a different vantage point, but it's not even new information. And people are just kind of over them and sick of them. And they're like, okay, just show us, do something, deliver something, give us good content. And, maybe you can try to redeem yourself. Maybe you can make it in Hollywood because you are producing these amazing films or documentaries or whatever. But until you stop using your own life as fodder, we're bored with you already and we're unimpressed and uninspired, which is never a great position to be in.
Well, it tanked their brand completely.
Yeah,
Anything that they hoped to achieve by being the what was their first moniker, like the Royal something, um,
Sussex Royal.
the Sussex Royal. Uh, when they had their beautiful stationery, their beautiful logo, their beautiful website, they had all these big plans. They were going to do all this stuff. If they had kept themselves out of it and gone
Hmm.
ahead and showcased the ideologies or the charities or the work or the service that they wanted to do instead of that continued self focus, they could have
Hmm.
actually done something with that brand. They could have actually and done it actually as working royals had they had the wherewithal to do that, which they did not.
Yeah.
So they tank, in my opinion, they tanked their brand way before the Oprah interview,
Hmm.
because they stepped away from their intentionality and into spotlight grabbing. I don't know what's a good word. Um,
Fame whoring.
did you say fame whoring? Is that a
I
thing?
did. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you've never heard that? Yeah.
I'm Oh my God, that's such a good word. Fame
Yeah.
whoring. Yes, that's it. So in my opinion, they tanked their brand 3.5 years ago. Everything has just been fallout from that. Even like
Hmm.
the Spotify deal, the Netflix deal, all that stuff, everything, the in-game book, every Finding Freedom, everything.
Hmm.
None of it has redeemed them in any way where they could actually pick up the baton and keep running with the service that they intended to do from what they say in the first place. So, we talk about that. One of the things we want to do on this podcast is say, like, all right, the brand imploded. Can it be redeemed? Is there redemption for them at the end of all this?
If you asked me, even if you asked me right after Oprah, I probably would have been like, yes, they can turn this ship around. They said their piece. Let's move on. Let's focus on putting out good content or, making a difference or whatever it is. We are now an Oprah interview, two magazine interviews, a docu-series, a podcast, and a book, and then two books written by other people into them just making a brand out of trashing Harry's family. Never mind what Meghan's done in terms of like trashing her own father. I don't know. I think the only way for them to turn it around and redeem themselves is to disappear for a while. They have to
Yes,
they have
yes.
to disappear, let us not hear a peep out of them, and just, I don't think anyone's ever going to necessarily forget that all of this has happened. But if they kind of go underground for a little while and then they come out in a year or two with some new commercial venture or not, maybe it's a nonprofit, maybe we just see that they've made a donation somewhere, I don't know. But if they give people time to not be so annoyed with them, maybe. Meghan had said in the Oprah interview, like, I was everywhere and nowhere. And that's how it still feels. Like, we don't see the Sussexes out a lot, but we are hearing about them constantly. And the reason we are hearing about them is because they are putting out stories, they are putting out content, their team is leaking this, that, and the other thing. And it makes what she said on Oprah, she was everywhere and nowhere because that was by design of the royals, like she couldn't have a life. It's like, oh no, you're still doing that. And you complained about it then because you didn't like it. But guess what? Like, we don't like it now because the everywhere we're getting is so negative. And I think the only hope they have is to just go away for a bit, for a while, like 2 years minimum.
I think you're right. And here's something else I think. So a lot of times redemption happens when you have a quote unquote coming to Jesus with yourself, you know, when you can kind of look at your own hubris or your arrogance and say, all right, here are all the things that I did wrong. Here are all the flaws. We're all flawed. We're all broken. So, hey, I'm not saying I'm not broken. I 100% am. But if you're able to look at that brokenness and saying, what from this, where's my way forward where I can be someone who serves, if that's what they want, if that's their what they want to hang their hat on, how do I serve? Well, you don't serve by being self-serving, right? That's
Right.
not serving. That's just
Right.
self-serving. So in order to be serving, I think going away, making a new plan, looking at where you can do what was their thing, do good or something. um I think, and not make yourself the center of it. Like that's the thing. Like, do great work. We want that. We want you to do great work. God knows that there are so many charitable institutions that desperately need help from people who can bring the help. I have no doubt that they can still rally people to bring the help. They just don't need to be at the center of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do think there's redemption, but they need to make it they're a life of service and not a life of self-service.
I mean, even though if they were just going to go the commercial route, right? They're like, we don't want to just be like running a nonprofit or whatever. Megan wants to, like, if she had brought back the TIG right away, and or she had gone down the Gwyneth lifestyle guru type of thing right away, oh my God, the money she could have made. They said when they left they wanted to become financially independent. If Megan had brought back the tag, rolled out a lifestyle line, maybe, been an influencer for some skincare brand or something, she would have been rolling in money. They would have been so financially independent, it would have been insane. Because at that point, people didn't have this necessarily negative connotation of them. And people were kind of like, okay, they're going to do their own thing. I think the curiosity, if Megan had started like becoming kind of an influencer, endorsing brands or whatever. I think the curiosity factor of like, oh, okay, well, like a princess uses this product. Let me check it out. people totally would have gotten behind it. And I think that she messed up by not going the commercial route right away. And now after making such a big deal about, oh, it's a life of service, service is universal, all of that, then to start trying to do more commercial stuff, which is what we're gonna, what the content deals were. It's what we're gonna see with the content that still has to come out from Netflix, where they're producing that movie that they bought the book rights to. It's kind of like, oh wait, I thought you said you guys were gonna be like charitable. What happened to that aspect of everything? And it's another time where they kind of talked a little bit too much and shot themselves in the foot. So I think they made a misstep there. But I'd love to see. I would still, after all of this, after feeling so personally hurt by them, I would still love to see Meghan go the Gwyneth, like become like a mashup of like Gwyneth and Angelina, and go the lifestyle guru humanitarian route and make it work. But like you said, she has to take herself out of it. It can't be about like her plight and her problems and how hard it's been for her. It has to be about other people and just bringing some sort of like joy to the world as opposed to airing her grievances constantly.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% entirely. And, I'm not a huge Angelina fan. And please, I'm so sorry, but I'm not.
Oh, I'm
But
not
I am
either.
a,
I think what she did to Jennifer Aniston is atrocious, and I will never forgive her.
yeah, for me, it's more than that. But I am a huge Gwyneth Paltrow fan. I think that she has done really fabulous things with the Goop, I don't know, conglomerate, I guess it is
Hmm.
now. I mean, it's a big
Yeah.
deal. And while she's a part of it, she has a lot of people around her who do a lot of things and they are also a part of it. It looks like she gives a lot of opportunity to a lot of people, which I love.
Hmm.
Um, and she doesn't come out and say, I'm living a life of service. No, she's living a lifestyle. It's a
Right.
lifestyle brand. And while she says, I really hope women love this and it's for women and, it's such a great thing and it's incredibly expensive. I can't even afford her candle.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun and fun to watch her and fun to watch the influencers who are on it. And the lifestyle is really fun and fun to look at the products. If
Yeah.
Megan were to do something like that without hubris or without whining or just having fun doing a lifestyle brand and kind of said to the world like, hey, I realize that like I'm not making the difference I wanted to make, so I'm going to do this lifestyle brand and hopefully bring some joy to some women, and I think that's okay for now while I reconfigure what I'm going to do somewhere else. I would be so happy to hear that from her. um, because I think she's cute and I think that she's pretty and is fashionable and has all the necessary ingredients to have a great lifestyle brand. Go do
Yeah.
that, you know? Um
Yeah. And I think one of the things about Gwyneth's brand that Megan could totally emulate is that Me- Gwyneth is unabashedly aspirational, right? Like she knows her products are ridiculously priced. She's not pretending that this is like, every person can afford this and that this is a reasonable price point. She knows it's aspirational and she leans into that. And she kind of does it with a little bit of a
a
smirk and a
wink and a
shrug, I think.
smile.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Like
Yes.
and like while Gwyneth's brand is very aspirational, Gwyneth herself still seems very approachable. And I think Megan could have done that. Like she so could have been the approachable yet aspirational person. I mean, like what's more aspirational than a literal princess? And what is more approachable than a girl with divorced parents who's biracial who grew up in a regular house just like you and me and who became a duchess? Like it would have been the perfect brand. She would have made so much money if that was the goal, was to make money, which it seems like it was for all their talk of service. It seems like money was the goal. They said financial independence, like whatever. And I think she just blew it because now people don't like her as a person. So like it's no longer she's no longer approachable and she's not that aspirational because nobody really wants to be like her. You know what I mean? Like she kind of ruined that avenue a little bit. I still think she could do it. I still think she could pull it off, but like she's got to give enough time to let it go. and to let people kind of forget. And I don't know that we'll ever see an apology out of the Sussexes. I would love to see though. I think that would actually kind of be key to their brand redemption. Not necessarily some sort of like grand public apology or whatever, but I think we've got to see.
Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement.
I just think we've got to see them on good terms with the people that they've slighted. We don't have to know what happened behind the scenes. I don't have to hear Meghan say, like personally, I don't have to hear Meghan and Harry say, like, we're sorry for what we've done. But I need to know that the people they've done it to forgive them. Or the people they've done it to can get past it so I can too. You know?
Yeah, and I
Like
don't know
I'm not
about
over it till
Harry.
Kate's over it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that honestly, I mean right now she's in it, but maybe when she gets through this and this kind of dies down, I think Kate is really has washed her hands of Megan, frankly. And maybe Harry to some degree too. I think it's going to take an act of God for them to get back together. If I'm honest, I'm sorry, but I do. They hurt their whole family. They didn't hurt just one person. They hurt individually each member of the family.
Yeah.
So
And they went
I
after
don't know.
Kate, who like Kate and Harry had been so close for so long, and she was always throughout all of the drama, it was always reported like Kate was trying to get William and Harry to talk. Kate was trying, like she was still in contact with Harry even when William wasn't talking to him anymore. And I think when Harry went after her in Spare, and then again letting Omid go after her in the book, I think Kate's the person. If I think if they can get Kate to forgive them, that will open the door for William and Charles to forgive them as well. But I think right now the royal, like William especially, like he could Harry could have insulted William all day long, but like the second he went after Kate and Spare, that was probably it. And Kate has to be the one who says it's okay, we can move on. And I do think that Kate is the type of person where that will happen at some point because she understands that her position is to be for the greater good always. And if the greater good means forgiving her brother in law and her sister in law so that, for example, her kids can grow up with their cousins, so that Archie and Lilibet can grow up with their family, I think Kate will be the bigger person, put it aside, and do what's right for everybody, not necessarily what just feels right to her because she's hurt. And I really think the kids will come into play. I really think making sure that Archie and Lilibet are part of the family is what's going to bring everybody back together.
I will say I feel like that Archie and Lilibet will suffer the most from the fallout because they're not
Hmm.
only separated from Harry's entire family, they're also separated from 50% of Meghan's entire family. They only have her
Hmm.
mom. You
Yep.
know, some families are total assholes and you shouldn't be a part of it ever. But I don't
Right.
see that as the case here. At least for on Harry's side, I don't know as much about, Meghan's dad and the siblings, but just by all accounts, on Harry's side, there are some very nice people who care deeply about him.
Hmm.
So, and I don't know about Harry's redemption, by the way. I was thinking about this. So he really outed some people in his book and in the series and the things that he's said and done. And I think he's so lost, or he just appears to be so lost. And I think it's going to take him some real time to figure out where he goes from here. Like, I'm not saying there's not redemption for him, but I'm not even sure what it looks like because he wasn't an influencer. He wasn't someone who was well known other than being a royal. Um, so
Right.
I just don't know where he goes from here. Megan, I feel like there's an avenue for her.
Hmm.
I'm just not sure there is for him yet. I think he's going to have to reinvent himself in a way that includes making amends with the people that he's hurt. I don't know.
Yeah. I think Harry's road is honestly, I don't know if Harry has a brand opportunity outside of being a royal. I think that his what happens next for Harry, in my opinion, and actually what I hope to see happen is Harry, Archie, and Lilibet start having a relationship with the royal family, whether Meghan is part of that or not, in terms of like whether she wants to have a relationship with her husband's family, because some people don't like their in-laws and like that is what it is. I'm not one of those people. I love mine, but some people don't, and that's fine, and they don't all have to be best friends. But I think that Harry's next step is he just goes like he just becomes part of not necessarily a working royal, but he just becomes like a member of the extended royal family again. And like I don't he doesn't have anything else to necessarily like by his own admission, he's not very book smart. He doesn't have a lot of like skills to offer up. You know, Megan can fall back on. She's an actress. She has experience in Hollywood. She has experience working with brands. Harry doesn't really have any experience doing anything other than being a member of the royal family. And I think that that's kind of his only thing. Unless he's happy to just, maybe he's happy to just be a dad in the background and let Megan always take the spotlight. And maybe he could be content with that. I mean, he didn't like taking a backseat to his brother, or his nephew, but maybe he's cool doing it with his wife and his own kids. So
Well, here's what I
that's
think Harry does have going for him. And I have thought this since he was a little boy. He has empathy. Now, he didn't demonstrate it in Spare. He didn't demonstrate it in his docuseries, but I know he has it. I've seen how he is with children. I've seen how
hmm
he is with people like at the Invictus Games. He has a real heart for wounded birds. Like
hmm
he just does. And for small children, he's got a ton of empathy. If he could capitalize on that empathy and use it in a way that serves the public where he is not the center of the attention, I do think there
hmm
is redemption for him in that way. But that involves acknowledging your own hubris and your own brokenness and then making amends. There's a long road for him
right.
if that was going to happen. But I do think he has empathy, which sometimes is greater than the smartest person in the world if you have empathy.
hmm
So, I mean, I think there's redemption, but I think it would be a long road, and it's hard. It's hard
Yeah,
to say I'm sorry. And not just I apologize, because I think we had talked about this. Saying I apologize and saying I'm sorry are two very, very different things.
right.
Or my favorite is I'm sorry you feel that way. That's
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. Is or like I'm sorry if I made you feel that. It's like no, 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 no. Nope.
yeah,
I need you to be actually sorry for what you actually did.
yes.
And
God,
I
that just drives me bananas.
And I think with Harry too, one of the biggest things, like if he decides to do something charitable, as you were suggesting, it comes off as very disingenuous until we see him acknowledge what he's done wrong in this situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
it wouldn't feel honest because if he's doing something to support a children's charity or something, I'd be like, oh, well, remember that time you dragged your nephew's and niece's mother through the mud? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't care about kids. You don't care about their emotional well-being. You don't care about people's mental health because you have no problem hurting the people closest to you. And you don't care about their mental health or their well-being. So how am I supposed to believe you care about a stranger? You
Right.
know? Like, it's
And I can
just
yeah,
doesn't work.
I can promise you that at some point he thought that writing Spare and putting Spare out there was going to give him some type of release, like it was going to free him from all these feelings that he'd had and he was going
hmm
to be fixed and all that. Well, you're not meant to be fixed. We're all broken. You use your trauma, you use the things that have broken you, and you do greater good for society. You don't use them to continue to hurt other people. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't just airing the things that hurt you so that you hurt other people doesn't fix anything, doesn't fix you and doesn't fix them, and
Right.
and and it doesn't allow you to make amends on their side or your side, even if there are things that they need to come to you and say I'm sorry for. Airing their dirty laundry does not make that happen.
Right.
I think one of the things they talk about when in addiction is you've got to go and make amends with all those people that you hurt. In Matthew Perry's book, oh, what was it called? Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Lie. I think it came out like a year ago. And
Hmm.
then bless him, he died. I loved him so much. But one of the things he talks about is having to, I think it was his book, making amends with all the people that you hurt, by doing the things that you did when you were an addict. And sometimes, people have addictive like personalities even when they don't have addictions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that with, one of the things with Harry and Meghan, I think one of their biggest things, like Harry, like you said, I think he thought Spare, especially, would be cathartic. I think he thought that he was going to he would feel better, but I also think on some level he really believed that if he could just explain to people what was happening, they, meaning specifically his family, would understand where he was coming from and apologize. They would see his side, and like he would really, like, everyone would be understanding. And I've said this before, I don't think he considered the fact that any apology he may have been owed, and perhaps he was owed an apology at some point, he did so much worse by everybody that all he did is make a bad situation worse, and like nobody owes him anything anymore. And like now he's the one who has to turn around and be like, "Hey, I realized I like really messed up and hurt you all, and only did it so that a publisher would give me a big fat check, and I'm really sorry." And like I think if he has any chance of redemption for himself, or like personally or privately with his family, I think it's going to be because everyone's willing to just put it aside for the kids. Because I think he's done so much damage to his relationship with his family that, like, they don't trust him. They won't talk to him because they don't know what's going to be private and what's going to be published in a book or in a documentary or leaked to a reporter. And I think the only way he comes back is if it's through the kids, which also sucks because then he's got to like what use his like is he gonna start using his children to get close to his family again? Like I don't know. I think Harry really screwed the pooch on this one, to use another silly expression.
That's one of my favorites, though. I like it. I don't disagree with you. I think you're absolutely right. And I am right now and today sad for both of them because I think they have a long road ahead of them. But I also have a small degree of hope that they could turn around. Maybe they'll listen to our podcast and hear this really helpful advice and change their ways. Listen, Harry and Meghan, we're delighted to talk to you. Call us. We can walk you through what we think you should do to redeem your brand. Um, but I do have hope for both of them, and I want to thank everybody who has been a part of this Harry and Meghan series. I feel like we've aired a lot of stuff that, while maybe not life changing for anybody, was certainly interesting,
Yeah,
and we'll
entertaining.
keep entertaining, and we will continue to update you as we move forward in our new offshoot Royal podcast, still called Royal Mess. You'll
Hmm.
see when the episodes come out, you'll see a little bit of artwork on our logo, so
Yeah.
you'll know if it's a royal episode or not. But thank you for everybody for listening, and y'all have a great day.